All right. So the intelligence agencies and DNI and all that, to their credit, there is compartmentalization, which means you could have the highest top secret clearance, certain things you can't see unless somebody like the director or the DNI or their uh, not appointee or the representative says you can see it. In simple terms. So there's a compartment. Some things are put places that only authorized people can see, and you could have the highest clearance in the land and not be allowed to see it. I started like when Ken Starr and all that stuff started coming out, but we started moving into those directions where we normally wouldn't have been there. And again, there were some other things going on around us. Now, there's a lot there. Obviously, Joe did have had additional effect over what everybody understood from the death of his wife. Again, this isn't like average government employee, not even average government investigator stuff. This is where he's put in this position of compartmentalized access. So that type of job requires somebody who, and again, if they would have pulled him away and maybe he had a little more downtime, it may have healed better. And again, we're in a very volatile world. He could have been directly, they could, again, a Russian spy, an Iranian spy, and again, it could be somebody that Joe knew from the war. But spies are moving other Americans to talk to Joe about it. Again, that's why they investigate Carlson and investigating all these people and manipulate him. Right. Again, I brought that up before with even some of the people in office. As you're being manipulated to say that. Again, some people say it's politics. Sometimes it's Iran, Russia, and all that. So, long story short, he's in this compartmentalized job, which he probably should have held because he was showing an effect. That's all it is. It's an effect of his wife being killed. And of course, there's people that were killed over the years. So it's a cumulative effect. And then finally, it was his wife, and he's had it. But again, to say it's Israel, I don't know, maybe makes $1 million for saying it. I don't know it. That's another world we're in. Well, I believe he was right. I'm not going to tell you he was wrong, but I don't have the answers to the inner workings of those agencies and departments. Now, one thing I will tell you, Trump has to be careful because they'll deceive him, whereas Joe is actually doing what Trump wants him to do. And then they take him down and badmouth him in Trump's mind. They may have actually been setting him up. Or the spies can get anybody to do anything. I told you about the spy that they charged for taking money from China after he left the agency. I believe that was an assassination. Now, whether he took it of his own volition, he made a mistake. You don't take money from China unless you're in and you see specific handwriting authorizing it. Right. He was a contractor or something. He was out. Again, similar scenario, possibly. We don't know. Because government employees are shitty, man. they're shitty. They'll do you in a second. The money grubbers and all sorts of things. And they're like narcissists. They just hate. Like, obviously, Joe Kent has a lot of credit in his life. Military, government, status. They hate it. I told you that years ago. or starting to tell you. So somebody has to look if you want to get the answer as to whether Joe was out of bounds. And it's going to take somebody special because they're going to operate that person. And you might even offer them $10 million, $100 million. Who knows? It's all funny money to them. They steal it from government treasuries all across the globe. I would, again, there are people that would have killed Kirk and not even be Israel or anything at that level. I mean, people just hate him for having that outsized presence in government. Having gone through something like that, but much smaller. No, no doubt the government is still full of sociopaths. Well, he pulled the chute, there's no doubt. But there's questions as to what it was. And at the very worst, he's disabled. I mean, I'll tell you, it's impossible not to be disabled living the life Joe Kent lived. It's impossible. But the better the life you have, the better protected life you have, the less it affects your life. They may have been triggering his disabilities. They do that to me or try to do that at the time. Now, they're my disability. Actually, having money would have just destroyed the disability because I'd have a secure house and a secure life that they couldn't penetrate. Again, it's not really traditional mental illness. It's ongoing harassment by psychological operators. And that harassment being psychological torture in nature. There's no secure country. It's just they want you to believe it's somewhat secure by, in other words, they calculate how much they can take and steal before they say no. There was obviously a miscalculation under Biden. Got him thrown out of office pretty quick. Well, I don't think he's prosecutable, honestly. I mean, there could be something there I don't know about or I can't foresee. I just think it's a case of a war hero that had his wife killed in combat and it broke him. Again, you got to understand, Joe kept going in those jobs and going up. So essentially, there was no break. And then, of course, there's a lot out there today with the internet, with Tucker Carlson. See, Tucker Carlson's manipulated too, but I don't know how much is the shtick. Again, there is some the shtick in there. I mean, every type of person like that has their own kind of confines. Like, so if something's outside their confine, they don't report on it. And if something's inside their confine, they might, enlarge it. There's a possibility that somebody got wind, because again, making merchandise in the marketplace. So again, Joe Kent could have been made merchandise in the marketplace. The spycraft. Again, we have Kroll, we have Weinstein, and again, yes, they were Mossad, but it's not limited to Mossad. Right. Well, people, the bigger you are, the more money there is. My stuff was inside big. I didn't even know about it. But the bigger, and again, I was investigating Deep State and didn't know it. And the Deep State came up and tried to get me to do something corrupt, and I thought, well, this could be a sting operation. Here they wanted me to actually do it. That wasn't major, but it was something, like a test, Well, I'm useless to the Deep State. And that's what the government had become. And again, Joe Kent might be useless to the deep state. That could be all of it. If spies are honest, this is what I'll tell you. If spies are honest, they could tell you they can make anybody do something. It doesn't mean, okay, so they want me to murder somebody, they want me to rape somebody, but there's a whole journey to that. So I can see a series of events that they would manipulate Joe with to take him where they did. Not that I had that big a thing happen, per se. It's actually probably bigger in reality. Reality isn't. Well, if you ask me, Joe is the guy that Trump wanted investigating. Now, could there have been a deal with Israel where certain people would be dealt with and don't go public with it because it doesn't serve the national interest? Yes, and that's the point with Joe. He lost his military bearing, is what we would call it back in the day. Could be some influence. Could be some Jews could have been mad. Somebody could have sold Kirk out. Say, oh, Kirk's talking to Trump about this. And they give him a finder's fee or her a finder's fee. Right. And they start that psychological influence. But Kirk himself could have been influenced to be more inflammatory than he needed to be. Again, some people would call him a jerk. And not everything he said, but he became you try to overturn Kirk's argument, then he becomes a jerk. And jerks you around. So, I mean, the truth is the only thing that works. So they may have actually this thing could go back, way back, like maybe 6 months to a year before Kirk was actually assassinated, where they were manipulating him to be a better target. Now, these are all spy type of things. I've never been a spy, but I've had plenty try to kill me with psychology most. So again, I think it's smaller than we know, but I don't think it's ever disclosable. But it might be. I mean, I don't believe it's disclosable, and that's going to cause the issue. Joe could be right, but it doesn't mean that it serves the national interest. That's why executive privilege exists. But again, I don't know. Trump would have, and his people would have to decide what they believe went on. They could have just soiled Joe in your eyes and made Joe move in certain ways he shouldn't. Because it could have all just been just wanting to get rid of Joe, and it just got out of hand. He'd be a big target, and a huge target. He's just the kind of person they don't want around. And they hate military people, believe me. You have to be extra careful when you're military. So again, possibly appointing an independent counsel, but obviously the independent counsel could get shut down like Joe did, because again, we're dealing with compartmentalized work. So I'm not sure what direction would be best as far as who, when, how. A secret court is probably where it needs to be. But you could tell the public this is going to be a limited inquiry. It's intelligence world. This is just the way it is. And I think that's what you're not doing. Well, you have to explain the intelligence world. Again, the idea where it's open sunshine in the intelligence world is impossible. But again, I'm somebody that tells you there's corruption always in the intelligence world. It's just the kind of people they attract. Right. And again, the Comeys and the Muellers have people that we don't know about. See, the good thing about Comey, Mueller, I think, of course, there were people back then we didn't know about. The idea of having Comey, Mueller, Tenet, Brennan, we knew the names at the top, or theoretically at the top. For all we knew, Kroll could have been running. Kroll's a good name to use because he's somebody that you can look at and see what they've been into. Not to say he was. Well, again, remember, they want money, they want bigger life, and they want outsized protection. So if you have a Kroll operator protect or a team that's assigned to protect you and your people, you can't, like somebody like me can't even come up in government if it looks like I'm going to outpace you. So again, that could be Joe. That's one of the reasons they attacked me. I didn't know that there was people working for. Again, they claim they work for CIA, and some do, but it's not CIA interest. It's personal interest. It's corrupt interest. So if they tested Joe, so you see how it works? They couldn't trust Joe to be deep state, so they soil it. And now he's the guy that looks like he's doing something he's not supposed to. So the president may have been lied to there. And again, Tulsi could have been lied to, or Tulsi may not know. I mean, because again, if you're not attacked by the deep state for any extended period of time, it's a little difficult to understand everything that I understand. And a lot of people die before they understand. So again, I don't know who you could use, who's trustable and who's not. Well, you just have to tell yourself when you're talking to a spy that everything coming out of that spy's mouth could be absolute bullshit and lies and deceit. That's really the way they used to shoot spies. You can't even trust them around you when they're not actively spying. Well, the basic idea is you need to find somebody who's a friend of Joe's, maybe going back to the combat years, and be the errand boy. Are you the errand boy? Apocalypse Now. You're an errand boy. Yeah, Hashem gave me a lot of training films. Joe Kurtz. But so I would just have somebody talk to him off the record. Again, I had people talking to me off the record, but it was deceit because they deceived the person talking to me. That's one of the issues, again, with spies, when spies are involved. Right? They lied to Joe, not Joe, to Jim Spicer. And the problem is his wife was part of the scam. I don't know how they manipulated her. I wasn't there long enough, and I wasn't awake yet to really understand it. Right. I mean, he was protection detail guy for the governor, and they put him in it. I mean, he knew where to invest and become rich and all that. So again, I would find somebody who could talk to Joe and say, okay, where are we? What should we do? We're not interested. Again, I would tell him, and I would bring cash in. I would have a meeting and say, you should come to the conclusion that it's a form of disability, and you didn't catch it. So again, you have Joe could almost probably sue you. Again, those lawsuits are kind of weird, but right. Well, because he was disabled, and you should have caught that, and you shouldn't have been put in that position. It doesn't mean that he's non-functional. It's just you're talking. I mean, that's a pretty high-level position. It takes a lot, and to have been in war that long, and then have his wife killed. I mean, Satan hates him. That's obvious. So I would find somebody. Tucker Carlson needs to be out of the picture for a while because he's not a military dude. He's not. Well, again, wake Joe up and say, Joe, I would tone it down. We're not interested in prosecuting. We believe it's disability. We're not gonna incarcerate you in a loony bin. like they did in the old days. But just, it's, the idea is that it's a disability. He shouldn't have done those things, but it's forgivable, and he served his country, and that's the idea. He served his country, and you want to respect it. But you believe all those combat tours and his wife being killed caused him to see it a different way, and in some ways he might be right, but being right doesn't mean that it serves the national purpose. You see, I don't think I have to be telling people this stuff. Right. Well, again, access to the president was cut off. That sounds like a deep state maneuver. Right. Well, because Joe may have actually been doing what President Trump wanted. He may have been the only person. Right. And again, I'm not blaming Tulsi. I think maybe, Tulsi, she isn't an overhead. That's like Schiff's thought attack. Yes. It's just when you're talking about what's going on with deep state, it's very difficult. Again, Schiff and his people are the deep state. But they'll tell you, oh, Tulsi's over her head, because deep state got her. Again, working in a spy agency, you have to be, you can't relax. I mean, maybe you all have a better life and never experienced it, but it's like being in a spy scenario. I've been under a spy scenario since before I left the government. It's worse in your own country because they pay people off and nobody cares. If I was in Russia, I could actually get probably larger protection from U.S. spy operators trying to kill me for criminal enterprise. But again, I would have to, actually, when I came out of the government, I really did help the government. So, like, if I was in Russia, they probably wouldn't trust me with any, secrets of murdering people, but they would appreciate my help, right? And then I wouldn't have lived that life. No, it's insane what they did in my life, considering what large a help I was. But it's the same idea. They just can't deal with it. They're nobodies. They can't do what Joe Kent does. But they want the job, and then when they do the job, they just make up excuses all day. Right. So that would be the two things I would do. I would find somebody to talk to Joe about, toning it down a little bit, and again, explain to him. Maybe he didn't think of it. Well, because if it serves your personal interest, it doesn't mean that it serves the interest of the nation. And as far as no war with Iran, 6 of one, half dozen the other, to tell you the truth. But the idea is, why should we have to deal with Iran when it's rogue like that? Nobody should. I mean, we're not the only ones. And again, I imagine without the war, there's probably a lot of extortion that these people were afraid of. Right? So the war kind of pushed them. Hashem will do that. God will do that. Will push you over the edge so you're not afraid of extortion. Well, because it gets in the way of doing what you're supposed to do, and then, of course, saving people. You let people die and be used and extorted just because so you won't be. Again, that's the deep state scam. So possibly an independent counsel, a very well-defined one, because again, they're going to get shut. The independent counsel will come back and complain about not having access. Well, they're only supposed to have access to what they're supposed to have access to. Well, we don't know. Again, there could have been actually a team of spies assigned to find out what Joe was looking for. But they didn't want to use Joe because they wanted to take it from a spy operational style. Like just send this special team of spies. I don't know. Again, I don't have enough information. So again, just because the government isn't letting you do something doesn't mean the government isn't doing it. Obviously, somebody did continue on my work, and they fired a bunch of U.S. attorneys. Probably not all of it was about me and about John, but that was part of it. And again, some of the people that did that were part of the teams to check out the U.S. attorneys and everything. So again, that corruption goes this way and that way. You saw at a certain point, I'm what's his name? George Bush Jr. changed. Because he found out the truth. What I received inside when I woke up, I don't know how long after, probably 6 months to a year, probably about a year, was that the George Bush administration was that what they did put into my head. Again, I didn't even know I was receiving. I didn't know psychic exists. I didn't know the awake, asleep. I didn't know anything. So I was receiving this thing that it was authorized by the president to do this to me. So I wake up and it's I was pretty pissed at Cheney because again I'm a Desert Storm guy. And so I get this idea that we authorized something, but we did not authorize what happened to you. They're full of shit. And that's some of what they did in firing people, correcting that whole nonsense. Now, George Bush did not authorize the execution of a Desert Storm veteran. But that's how they carry it. And that's how they carry it as deep state. Oh, yeah, I got authority to this, I got authority to that. We know for sure he's about to offend. It's all bullshit. It's all spycraft. It's all shoot him at dawn. But the nation isn't set the way it's supposed to be set, so we can bring them in and get that death sentence. Because they're running a lot of extorting. People don't want to lose what they have. That's why they don't want Joe Kent there, possibly. Because he don't play the game. That's why they hate him too. Except for, military people, shitbags in the military, and call them cheeseheads or whatever. So again, the best thing is maybe I don't know if you want to put public information out, because again, it doesn't look good. It's not a good look. And the president could say, look, we're going to get to the bottom of it. It may not be disclosable because this is the spy world. You have to explain to them the spy world. That's why executive privilege exists. So there's a lot of questions. Again, they may have worked it out with Israel. Right? There was a lot of people that were fired over the years. They do work those deals. So I can't tell you what happened. Joe can't really. Again, he might be still in the middle of a deep state assassination. So, Brennan may have sent 50 people out to kill him. Once he shows up, they have a couple people go check him out and know he's not good for what we do, then they try to get rid of him. And then everybody he's dealing with, the deep state, is spy-oriented, doing spy work when he thinks he's just talking to people, everyday people that he works with. And he thinks it's his idea to go hook up with Carlson when it's their idea. So again, I would just say that what they used is the fact, I'm not saying you just say it, he's disabled, especially for that position. And what? Once his wife was killed. So the fact is he is disabled, and I would tell him that, we think you're disabled. And again, if you tell me he's disabled, you got to say, look, we're not going to, we're not going to commit you to a mental institution. But obviously, 8 tours or some shit. And then, and his wife was killed. Somebody else was saying had 6 tours. And I think that person really lost. I can't remember who that was. I think it was it may have been the guy that killed the Iraqi, just assassinated the Iraqi. I mean, again, it shouldn't be done, but this is a mitigating circumstance that he had 6 tours. The United States Army should have figured out that, hey, we send this guy stateside for a year in between those tours. Again, that's one of the mistakes. And we shouldn't have stayed in that presence for that long. It was just, again, I know Hegseth has the information because he says we're not going to stay. And I bring up embezzlement. That may have been the only reason we were there. People are sick, man. People are sick. I stood up for some guy that had 6 tours or something, and I said, "Look, he's fried. The Army should have pulled him out quicker." And again, when your wife is killed, that's like. But the idea that Israel's doing more than they're doing is not true. Again, Israel is manipulating. We are manipulating. But the reality is, I think Joe's a little bit off base. But I do believe that he has a valid point that he was stopped from investigating and he received what he felt was the right justification. And at the same time, he was being deep stated. There's no doubt. But the question in that is, was he out of bounds? Now, the only way to find that is with an independent counsel. And again, you got to find an honest independent counsel. You can't find one that knows Brennan from 20 years ago. He was on the Kill Larry operation with Comey. If you know what small lives we all had, it's just it's beyond the pale. They've been doing me for like a decade or something like that. That time, John, at least a decade. Well, stay peaceful. Praise God in all that you do. Praise God.